So again, we're going to speak on the Pasha of the week based on the Rebbe's Sichos. And as we always say, most importantly based on ourselves. What? Huh? Can hear. He hears the off switch, but it doesn't listen. It's going off. That's the only way to switch it off, by putting the temperature down. All right.
No, turn on. No, cut the gas.
What? I can think now. As I was saying that we speak on the Seder of the week based on the Rebbe's Sichos, and as I said, most importantly, based on ourselves. This is not just a play on words, but this is an important element that we have to understand, that real understanding of Torah especially means that we can find ourselves in what we are learning. In learning Tanya, is it Tanya talking about somebody else or talking about you? Is it talking to somebody else or is it talking to you? Can you relate to it? Do you see, the Tanya is describing a Yid. Is he realistic? Is he talking about you? So we have to know that he is talking about us. And if we have a difficulty in relating to the way that Tanya is describing a Yid, then we have to dig in a little deeper, talk it over. But we have to ultimately find ourselves in the Torah that we are learning. It's brought down that when a Rav goes to Paskin a Shaila, and it could be a Shaila in just simply if the piece of meat is kosher or not, and it could be a din Torah, a dispute between people, any kind of question that comes up to the Rav, and the Rav goes over to the bookcase, takes out the Shulchan Aruch, and finds a similar halacha, and he says, okay, according to Shulchan Aruch, this is what it should be done. This is not a Rav. A Rav does not paskin just because he found something in Shulchan Aruch that alludes to this kind of case. He has to understand every case individually. He has to understand all the nuances, all the unique aspects of every case. And then think through all the halachas that are pertinent, and ultimately when he comes out with a ruling, it has to be a ruling that he personally takes responsibility for. Not the Shulchan Aruch, not the Alter Rebbe or Bis Yosef or anybody else. He personally takes responsibility for it. That's a Rav. Because ultimately, in the order of Torah that we learn, the dinim and all the values that we learn in Torah, in particular Chassidus, all these things are true to every Yid. They're Jewish, uniquely Jewish things, which means a Jew is uniquely adept and capable of relating and to understanding them. We're coming now closer to Pesach. And in preparation to Pesach, there are all kinds of very special halachas. So, in one of the things that we need to do before Pesach, I'm sure you're aware of, that we have to sell our chometz to a guy. And that creates a lot of complexity. What are the complications? Complications are that the method of a sale, the method of transaction that we use in Torah, the guy will not be able to relate to it. He won't be able to understand what we're doing. He doesn't have that an insight, not refined sense of reality. You've been to a chasana, right? To a l'chaim. Did you ever see a l'chaim that the Rav goes over to the chosan kala and they hold his handkerchief or something? You know what that is? That's called the kinyan. That's called the kinyan. And with this kinyan, we Yidden can transact all kinds of different dealings and becomes valid. All kinds of different dealings with this kind of a kinyan. So there's no way you're going to get a goy to understand what that is. You can't do it with a kinyan. There's no way. In other words, Torah is uniquely ours, and we have to learn and be able to relate to it. So this is why I say we're learning. We're talking about the Pasha in the week. We're talking about the Sichas from Rebbe, but ultimately we're talking about ourselves, so that we find how we can relate to it. How this is real and true to ourselves. In the Pasha of the week, you know, is Pasha Tazriah. And this Pasha begins to speak about the birth of a child and what happens with the mother and so forth, and then the mitzvah of Milah. The mitzvah of Milah is mentioned in this Pasha. And then all kinds of different halachas. Following with Mitzoras, and then the next Pasha is going to be with Tumantar and so forth. So Rashi brings down right in the beginning. He says that Rav Shimloya said that just as the creation of Adam, the creation of man, was the last amongst all the things that were created. He was the last to be created. So too, the laws pertaining Toirosai, the laws pertaining to the human being, to the Yid, also when his parish were expressed in the Torah, the last. And this is what we have in the previous Sedra in Pasha Shmini. We had the dinim regarding animals, kosher and non-kosher animals, and tumah, how animals become tumah and so forth, how animals cause tumah. And then this Pasha begins to talk about the human being, from birth and so forth. So the Torah of the human being was also in this parish was expressed in the Torah after everything else. Now, the Rebbe discusses in the Sikha what is this statement mean and what is its significance. there are two opinions, two completely opposite opinions in terms of why the human being was created the last. It's not a question of different opinions, different aspects, and they're both true, of course, and so forth. The human being is both superior to all other creatures and inferior to all other creatures. Anybody know what that means, superior and inferior? He's superior because he's got intellect. He's got a neshama that is superior to any other creature. On the other hand, he's also inferior. Inferiority and superiority, as we look at it, as a Torah looks at it, as a Yid looks at it, does not consist who is stronger, who can win in a battle, who can outsmart the other, who can fool the other better. That is not what we judge by superiority and inferiority. Inferiority and superiority is entirely based on how close one is to Hashem, how truly one represents the truth of creation, the truth of his creator, and how far away he is from it. He can be very smart, but if he does not recognize his creator and does not represent his creator, he's very, very low.
He's inferior because he was created last?
Because what?
Why is he inferior?
Because he's the least sensitive to the truth.
Because he was created last?
Because the creator what?
Is it because he was created last?
No.
No.
No, I'm saying what I didn't say anything about. I didn't explain yet why he would be inferior and superior. I just explained the concept of inferior and superior. We have to understand. To us, superior and inferior does not refer to who can win in a contest.
Mm-hmm.
This again is a very important principle to understand. We have a completely different set of criterion to identify value. What's superior, what's inferior. Amalek was a very daring nation. Here the Yidden came out of Mitzrayim, the whole world trembled. They said, we are not scared of them. We are going. To us, they're the most inferior of all creatures. The most insensitive to the truth. Completely opposite view than the world looks at things.
The world looks like that type of acts are superior.
Yeah, daring, and not stopping, not doing your own thing without regard to anything, without fear of anything. That's what the world celebrates, regardless of what it is. As I'm talking now, there was a nation. The Kuzari. I'm sure you heard of the Kuzari. Mm-hmm. The Kuzari, Melech Kuzari. The Kuzarim was a nation, a whole nation. They had a king, a very wise king. And the king had studied all the various religions, all the various values in the world. And he came to the conclusion that the Jewish religion is the true religion. That was the book Kuzri. There was a whole correspondence between him and the Yehuda Kosi. And he converted his entire nation to Judaism. It's a peace-loving nation. They did their own thing, and they thrived spiritually. And there was a Russian king who became the big hero who destroyed them all. And in the Russian lore, he's celebrated as the big hero. That's the upside down world. So, therefore, when we say superiority and inferiority, we have to understand the context of what we mean by that. A human being, as we said, is superior to all and inferior to all. Since inferior to all is something shocking, why is he inferior? He is obviously a greater thing. So the inferiority of the human being expresses itself, number one, in the fact that the human being is able to go against the will of his Creator. A human being can defy the laws that the Creator set for him. It's both laws in the Torah and natural laws. Like, for instance, the 7 laws of the Noachide laws. One of the laws that Noach received from the Meibashim, this pertains to all human beings, that you must not kill another human being. Murder is an unnatural thing for the human being as God created him. And yet, the human being can defy that, and he can commit, hideous crimes. That means that he can go below the surface, lower than and other creatures. They can only act within the norm of their nature. They cannot go outside of the realm of their nature. What?
I mean, they always still work at God's will, meaning?
Sorry?
They always do God's will, right? That's what
Yeah, I mean, they have their nature that's set up, and they act within the realm of their nature. A human being can go way below. He can go defy the will of his Creator, even though he knows it and he understands it and so forth. The reason that this is so is that, in fact, even though the human being has a superior neshama, a nefesh, he has an intellect, so spiritually he is superior to all the animals. There's no animal that compared to the human being. But physically, it's an interesting thing. We know that the human being was created from earth. The body was from pure earth. In other words, initially the body has absolutely no sensitivity. Without the life force of the neshama, the body is as plain earth. The animals, if you learn the Pasha Breshis, it says that the animals, they came out body and soul, so to speak, alive together. So their body came out alive, a low level of life, but an element of life. The human body, initially, on the basic level, it has no life at all, has no sensitivity whatsoever. So physically speaking, the human being is actually inferior on the lower level than the animal. Spiritually, of course, he is much higher. And this is, in fact, the reason that the human being can go so low, because he has physically, his orientation is entirely worldly, physical, even further than the animal. He can relate just to physicality without any sense of spirituality at all. And this is why he's capable of descending lower than his station, than what God created him. So here we have these two things in the human being. The superiority of his soul, the inferiority that comes from his body. The superiority of his potential and his intellect, the inferiority of the potential on the other side of how low he can go in terms of his actions. So, coming back to the question of the human being having been created the last of all creatures. In that sequence, there's a double symbol. One is that this symbol is to symbolize and tell the human being, you should know that all other creatures preceded you. Don't be so haughty and don't be so proud, because all other creatures are actually proud before you or preceded you. They're actually higher than you in the creation, on the totem pole of the creation. That's why he was created last. This is from the perspective of his inferiority. On the other hand, there is also, from the perspective of his superiority. The human being was the last one to be created, so that by the time he comes in the world, it's all ready for him. He can immediately partake and benefit and use it to his delight and to his purposes. This is why he was the last to come to the world, so that everything has been prepared for him. And as we mentioned many times, that actually when Adam Rishon was created, Hashem said to him that all the vegetation, everything that you see in the world, I created for you. And I'm giving it to you to partake. You rule the world, rule all the animals, and you should also, and you should benefit and feed yourself of all the vegetation that I created. It was all created beforehand to prepare it for Adam Rishon. So this is the principle of Adam having been created the last of everything. Coming back to the Torah, he says, and just as it was created the last, his Torah, the laws pertaining to human being, were also given last, after all the animals. Huh? Huh?
You mean for this Tama and Tahar?
All the laws, Tama and Tahir, that's right, and what are the laws of human birth, and the laws of Mila, Bris Mila, all kinds of halachas. And then further, the whole Chumash Vayikra has most mitzvahs. And these are all laws pertaining to Adam Rishon, to Adam, to human being. Korbanos and all that. So, just to clarify to you, it's not just Tumah and Tahara. It is business transactions that are also in Chumash Vayikra. To be honest in business and how you transact business and how you sell and buy, everything is in the Chumash Vayikra. Huh? The animals are dealt with first in the previous Sedra.
Oh, you're talking about that.
In Parashat Shmini, is the dinim of the animals, and then come all the dinim pertaining to Adam. So how was this reflect itself on Toirose, that his Torah was also disparish at the end? So the Rebbe explains that if we look at the two reasons why Adam was the last to be created, so if you look from the superiority perspective of his neshama, so that does not explain why his Torah was the last one to be mentioned, to be revealed, to be explained. That should be the first. This is superiority. Over there, he came last in order that everything should be ready for him. But that doesn't explain how that would fit into all the halachas pertaining to Adam. Therefore, that leaves us only the other reason, that his Torah was the last one to be nisparish because of the inferiority Avodah. And what is that? Where is that? How is that a reason? So, speaking about the human being, as I mentioned before, he has the body from the lowest and the soul from the highest. And it's wonderful that he has this soul. But this soul that he has, this is a gift that Hashem gave him. This is not something that he had created, worked on his own. This is not to his credit, so to speak. This is something which Hashem gave him. Hashem created him this way. Where is the real human being and the real accomplishment of the human being? The real accomplishment of the human being is in the very fact that he has this body that is of the coarsest of all elements in the world, the lowest, the inanimate, and he is able to transform and to illuminate this body and bring spirituality to the senses of this body. This is the real, so to speak, the real praise, the real status, the human status. That he is able to do, well, this is called avodah. This is called avodah. What's avodah? Avodah does not only mean when a person sits and learns and he memorizes what he learns or understands what he learns. Avodah, as I mentioned before, avodah means that a person learns something in Torah. And Torah is God's wisdom, God's Torah. It's godly. And he is worldly. And he takes this Torah and he works with it up on himself, on his own physicality, his own worldly orientation, until he, within his worldly orientation, begins to fully relate and understand this Torah. He begins to look at the world from a Torah perspective. That's the real avodah. Not just to know how the Torah looks at the world, but he begins to actually personally relate to the Torah truth. Like, for instance, taking the very simplest principle. We all know, it says in the Torah, Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'ha'aretz. God created the shamayim v'ha'aretz. So we know it. Somebody asks you, who created, where does the world come from? Oh, God created it. But are we actually relating to that reality? Is this how we look at ourselves? Is this how we look at the world? For that we need a lot of personal searching, a lot of personal labor to work this truth into our own psyche, work this truth into our own emotion and our own intellect, that actually I can relate to it, I can live out of this, that the world really belongs to Hashem, and that in fact the world represents godly truth and godly reality. That is called avodah. And I'll give a few examples, but before I go away from this point, this is the real meaning of avodah, of transformation, of birurim, of b'mevarer and elevating the world, of taking something in the world that appears to be completely natural and worldly, and the human being transforms its existence and says, no, this is not worldly, this is godly. and he begins actually to focus in on it and personally see it, that this is how the truth is. Give us a few examples. First, the very common, most obvious element, and that is the sun. We spoke about this many times. The sun produces enormous amount of energy. It emanates enormous amount of energy. And it does that on a constant basis for thousands of years. Now, anything that is of a worldly structure, the sun, no matter how large it is, it's still a finite, a limited entity, right? It has its size. It has so much energy, so much fire, so much heat, but it's something, it's immeasurable. So something that is natural, in a natural world, anything that emanates energy, like if you have a candle, and the candle gives off light by producing energy, by burning off its wick, eventually, no matter how large a candle is, eventually it will dissipate. It will burn itself out. Any fire, any experience that we have here, eventually has to dissipate. Not so the sun. The sun continues to produce this energy without any minimization, without any reduction in its power, for thousands of years. Now this is a phenomenon that the human being, it's incumbent upon him to recognize and to focus in and understand that this actually is calling your attention to the fact that the sun is not just a natural ball of fire and it gives off light because it's a ball of fire, but it is a creation of God to give light. And it is giving light. It's not, so to speak, a natural phenomenon at all. It's giving light because God, so to speak, said, you give light. And therefore the sun is giving light. And it defies, so to speak, the natural limits. It just goes on giving light without any reduction, any effect. So that it is incumbent upon us to reflect and to recognize that despite the fact that it's a physical entity, really it actually represents a godly phenomenon, a miracle, so to speak, an ongoing miracle in front of our own eyes. Going further and coming closer to home, so to speak, also something that we pointed out in the past. We live in a natural world. Natural world means that things essentially can be explained naturally. Meaning, we can explain everything. Why is this happening? Because this is so. Why is this happening? Because this is so. Everything has its sequence, everything has cause and effect, and it's all within the realm of nature, and we can explain everything. That's the way it appears at first glance. The reality, however, is that nothing is really natural. As we learned in Tanya, And Baal Shem Tov said that nature is nothing but a repetitive action. Something that repeats itself constantly. This is what's called nature. But really, there's nothing natural about nature. There's no real explanation why nature persists in the way that it does. Now I'll give you a very simple illustration from things that we experience all the time, but we don't necessarily pay attention to. So, this cup is standing on the table. So if somebody asks you, how come the cup is standing over here on this spot? The answer is, the table is holding it up. Right? Makes sense, the table is holding it up. The tabletop is holding it up. What's holding up the tabletop? The legs on the edge of the table are holding the tabletop. What is holding up the legs of the table? The floor. What's holding up the floor? The beams that go across. What's holding up the beams? The walls of the house. What's holding up the walls of the house? The foundation. What's holding up the foundation? The earth. Okay? Next step. What's holding up the earth? Can we continue on with that same sequence?
No.
We can't. Right? So our whole structure has now just collapsed. And we get to understand that this whole structure that we have been building up is all what's called, what's called a wall of cards. It's just holding itself, but it doesn't. This is just very relative, and in certain circumstances, this is how. In other words, the real truth is that the reason that the table is holding up the cup is because Hashem tells the table, hold up the cup. Hashem made this table that you should hold up the cup. And He made the earth, the teva, that the earth should hold up the foundation. Because ultimately Hashem is holding up the earth. So the whole nature is really a godly will. This is how God wants it. This takes a little avoida, and after we understand it, takes a little avoida, takes a lot of avoida to be able to actually say, like we always say, that when you go to work, the Gemara says in very short words the entire message. The Gemara says that when a Yid plows and sows the field, you know what plows and sows the field means? He plows the field, it softens up the ground, turns the ground over, and then he puts seeds in the field, and then he waits for rain to come down, or he waters it, and after a couple of weeks, lo and behold, his stalks of wheat are coming up. So the Gemara says, here is a Yid who is doing this, and next to him is a guy doing exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. Is there a difference? What is the difference? The difference is the guy is trusting the nature of the world, the earth. The guy is sowing that's a nature thing, and he will see the earth, and the earth will produce because that's a nature. He doesn't go anything beyond that. The earth, this is what's called the Mother Earth. That's what it's called, Mother Earth, right? Ayid, the Gemara says, has a totally different view on this. And the expression in the Gemara is, "Ma'amin b'cheiho ilomim v'zoreya." He believes and trusts the one who gives life to the world, and he seeds, and he puts seed in the ground. Because God said you should seed, so he seeds. He does not correlate the fact that he's seeding and therefore the earth is going to produce. He's seeding because God told him to seed. The Abba told him he should plow the field and he should seed it, so he does that. And then it's up to the Abba to give him the wheat or not to give him the wheat. So that, therefore, when he actually goes and he harvests his field, he says, "Oh, what a miracle! Look at this." And he takes a tenth of it and gives it away. He gives away a truma, meiser, whatever it is, because the whole thing is a miracle. Because in fact, the whole thing is a miracle. This whole cycle, this whole natural cycle that the earth produces indefinitely, without a cessation, without any break, creates whatever vegetation. This is a godly miracle. Just like the sun produces light indefinitely, and we see that this is a godly miracle, this is also a godly miracle. But the earth is able to create indefinitely. As a matter of fact, I mentioned, I believe a while ago, what the Baal Shem Tov says. There's a Kabbalah from the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov says, Shem Tov, you have to remember, I remember this, he's talking about 300 years ago. Before the cell phone, before the computers, before all the developments of the past couple of centuries, Shem Tov said that Hashem had imbued in the earth godly koiches, capabilities, and secrets that all the scientists of the world will never fathom, go to the bottom of it, and to understand fully what the earth is able to do. At the time when the Baal Shem Tov said, this would sound totally odd, because what was the earth? The earth is just a crust of of dust. So this is the real specialty, the real superiority of the human being is not in the fact that he was given a great neshama, but in his ability, just as God forbid he's able to fall over and go in the wrong direction, make a mistake. He can not only correct the mistake, but he can actually build upon it. There's a story with the Baal Shem Tov also, there's a story with the Baal Shem Tov, where the Baal Shem Tov had a talmid, a student, one of the Maltongan students, who, whatever the circumstances were, but the fact was that he strayed off. He strayed off, he decided to work away from Baal Shem Tov, he became a professor, whatever it is, and he broke away completely from Yiddishkeit. So, one time the Baal Shem Tov visited the town where this ex-student of his lived, and the Baal Shem Tov wanted to meet him, so he met him, he came to see him, and they had a talk. The Baal Shem Tov asked him a question. Tell me, what's a better horse? What's a preferable horse? A weak horse or a strong, fast horse? So he says, what kind of question? Of course, a strong. I don't understand you, master. What kind of question is this? A strong, how fast horse is much better? He says, but if a horse makes a mistake and goes off the road in the wrong direction, so if it's a slow, weak horse, how far can you go? Can't go very far away. But it's a strong, fast horse, a racing horse. By the time you realize that you strayed off, you're far away from the road, far away from the real main highway. So he says, oh yeah, of course. But then, if you're a strong horse, you can turn around and get back there. But if you're a weak horse, by the time you turn around, you lost all your koiches, you can't even get back anymore. So Baal Shem Tov said, no. In other words, Baal Shem Tov was implying to you, yes, you strayed up and you went very far because you're a strong horse, but now you can turn around and come back. You still have the koiches to come back. This is the very special quality. This is the very special quality of a human being. The fact that he can muster means get together all the koiches that he needs to work on himself and to do avodah and to transform. Transform means change from inside out. A whole perspective, a whole way of looking at the world, a whole way of looking at himself, a whole sense of values. I mentioned many, many times, we're all Baalei Tshuva. The truth is, I said we're all Baalei Tshuva. This world, in today's world, everybody's a Baalei Tshuva. Because everybody has been exposed to all kinds of dirt, all kinds of shtusim. Nobody is immune, and everybody's a Baalei Tshuva. Everybody has to make sense and focus and understand what reality is. Nothing grows by itself. And one of the primary difficulty of Baalei Tshuva, the primary challenge to Baalei Tshuva, is not just to start doing the right things. Like I said, put on tefillin, eat kosher, and keep Shabbos. These are the primary responsibilities of a Yid. But these are the easiest things to accept and to come by. The real challenge of Baalei Tshuva is to rid himself, to clean himself of all the viewpoints, all the attitudes, the values that have been absorbed by him from the Goyish world, and to transform them and to look at the world from a Torah and a Jewish perspective. That is the real challenge. That really requires an enormous amount of avodah, of working on oneself. I'll give you a couple of examples. In the world, it is a principle that is being taught that if you get upset, let off steam. Come on, don't hold it. It's not healthy. Get angry, bang on the table, scream, break something. You'll calm yourself down. I heard of such Mishugasim, but one time I myself witnessed. We were standing in shul, and across the street from Marshall's, another shul, whatever it is, and a Schwarzer, became angry of some a water pipe that wet his car, whatever it is. He went screaming, he went batty, and started pulling out all the pipes, the water pipes in the garden, whatever it is. One day, so we looked at him and says, the guy went crazy. And someone next to me, about Tshuva, says, don't you see he's very upset? It's perfectly justifiable what he's doing. He's upset.
Sarcasm, yeah.
Huh?
The guy was sarcastic when he said that?
No. He says, don't you see? I don't remember how he referred to it. There's a term for it, whatever it is. Don't you see? What are you having kindness for? Okay. This to transform from that and to grow out of that, to know that the human being is not an animal. And if something is upsetting you, yes, but that's why you have a brain. And you have to still guide yourself and do the right thing and calm yourself down. And if you are upset, who knows, maybe you deserve it. Who knows what? Maybe that will cleanse out a little bit some of your other qualities. But the point is, you have to still have to behave like a human being. The capability of doing just that and guiding oneself under all circumstances. And if one does get upset and one does, so to speak, lose himself, he's blaming himself. not somebody else. And he says, oh, I still need to work on myself. I still need to know that there is a God in the world, and I have no right to just go off as if I'm in a free for all. This similar principle applies in many circumstances. Something happened, and something very valuable of yours got broken, or something very valuable got lost, so it bothers you. But you catch yourself and you say, okay, what does that mean? That mean that I'm not going to put on tefillin next day until I calm down? That's for sure. I mean, what does it mean? Does that mean that for this time, while I'm upset, God, you wait for me. I'm coming back to you. Just stay out of my way, right? That's not the way we look at things at all. This requires avoida. This is called avoida. Avoida means to work things into yourself, not just to memorize and to spend your time learning, which is very important, but then to imbue that learning into yourself, to change your whole perspective. This phenomenon, this aspect of the human being, his ability to do avodah, this is the real praiseworthy thing of the human being. And this is why Teirose in his parsha, Teirose came after. Because this actually shows, on the one hand, he is the lowest, because he has the lowest body, the lowest, the biggest relation to the world, to coarseness of the world. That's why he's last. But he is able to transform it, and he's able to elevate everything about himself and about his world. So this, in conclusion, this is the message of the Parsha and of that Rashi. It's important for us all, when we notice a shortcoming in ourselves, and we can have all kinds of different reactions. This guy brings out the worst in me. This guy aggravates me. He gets the very worst in me. Or you start being despondent. Oh, this is terrible. I'm no good. And let's give up. Any of those things, anything that stops you from going forward, saying, okay, what's my next step? What do I do further? How do I get closer to Torah? How do I absorb Torah in my own psyche, in my own heart? How do I get to the point where, as the Alter Rebbe says, you can actually love another Yid just like yourself? Just like yourself. It seems completely odd. But it's actually possible. Not only possible, this is incumbent. This is one of the mitzvahs in the Torah. And each one of us is capable, has the ability to work in that direction. And if we work in that direction, with God's help, we can't even imagine the success and the blessing that we get. Just want to point out a very simple and yet very revealing principle. when one walks on straight ground, the walk on straight ground is pretty smooth, pretty easy, not very challenging, and you cover a lot of ground as you walk. But each step just gives you one step worth of orientation, right? You make one step, so you are one step further. But if you climb up a mountain, the challenge of climbing is very heavy. It's much more difficult. You really have to exert a lot of strength to make a step. But when you make a step, what happens? All of a sudden, your whole horizon changes. Your whole horizon. With one step, you may be able to see tens of miles further and see a completely different world. This is true in Ruchnis as well. We can walk smoothly and try to stay, so to speak, within the realm of our understanding. And it is fine. We accumulate more and more understanding, more and more knowledge. The real challenge is to work on ourselves and to break through and to understand that which yesterday I couldn't understand. As a matter of fact, the real challenge is to try to relate to that which seems to elude me. I can't relate to this. That's the real challenge. Any little bit of breakthrough in that elevates a person immensely, way beyond anything that he would be able to accomplish by a smooth ride. Way beyond. So the Rebbe should help us all to recognize this special gift, this special ability, this special power that we have to work on ourselves, to purify ourselves by discipline, by directing ourselves, not giving in, not giving up, chas v'sholom. And then, after a very short while, one wakes up and he turns around and says, I don't understand. I don't recognize myself. What happened? Just a half a year ago or a month ago, I could never fathom that this will ever make sense to me. And all of a sudden, hey, that's real. It really makes sense. A different person. And this is how we set ourselves up for life, going on a solid ground and progressing all the time. The Rebbe should help us all to find this path. There is no greater blessing that a person can wish on himself than to want to work hard. Not to give it. There's no greater blessing. And that is a special blessing that we have at Eden. And then we should all be successful in Mitzvah Shem. And it's almost time to say Kosher and Pesach. We'll see each other still before, but it's time to wish for it, because it's a very heavy thing to have a Kosher and Pesach. Not an easy thing. Yeah. With all the caution, it's not easy. Huh? With all the caution, with all the precautionary, all the things that you do. Have a kosher Pesach is a special wish, right? So I should have a kosher Pesach and should be matzliach in all that you do. Что? I'm sorry?
The main job is to work on ourselves, refine our animal soul and stuff. That's like the main